Welcome to the Greener Way podcast, a show about people, planet, and purpose, and how investors and corporate leaders push forward in a complex world. As we're now in peak summer season, we here at the Greener Way are reviewing our swimwear wardrobe with an eye, as always, on the intersection of fashion and ethics. Joining us for this conversation is Charys Caldarella, founder of ethical swimwear line Styelle Swim, to talk about how she goes about making an ethical and sustainable swim line. Now, in the fullness of disclosure, I do have several Styelle suits in my wardrobe. This is not a product endorsement podcast, but I'm delighted to welcome you to the show, Charys. Charys, introduce yourself a little bit more and talk about why you founded Styelle.
Thanks so much, Rachel. I'm so happy to be here. The biggest thing about founding Styelle was I discovered the amount of waste in the petrochemicals in the fabrics. So as someone that has skin conditions, I found it really hard to wear certain fabrics, and swimwear was one of them. So that was a big thing for me. That's what started my journey. But once I realized, the unethical, I suppose, best way to describe it, child labour, that kind of became a driving force. As a mum of 6, I couldn't handle it. Seeing children sleeping on piles of fabric will change you. Undoubtedly, especially growing up in the Western world where child slavery isn't even heard of in this country. So, seeing it in Thailand is it's something that's, that was definitely it for me. Well, it was a big turning point. But when I dove deeper, I realized how much more is actually into it. Like when they wash the fabrics, or the dye gets put straight into the riverways and oceans, especially throughout Southeast Asia and India, it's very prominent. And the people that are using these dyes are actually getting cancer at an alarming rate. The women that are sewing these fabrics are actually becoming infertile. There's a lot of other things that are flowing down the line on top of it's just we shouldn't be wearing petrochemical clothing. Like there's a whole heap of other things that need to be opened up. It's a whole can of worms.
This is why I love a conversation about supply chain, Charys, because you find something on the surface as the end consumer, but then you start diving in and going through the layers, and there's just so much more that you can uncover and be ethical about. So when did you found Styelle, and how do you go about creating something from the ground up where you feel confident that there's no child labor, sustainable fabric, sustainable dyes?
Oh, wow. Well, I actually built the brand over 2 years before it launched in 2016. So Amnisol Eco, which is the fabric that we use, was actually founded back in 2013. So that was fully launched in 2013, but it was only a soft launch. So no one had really gotten a hold of it yet. We proudly wear the cap of being the first people to have it in Australia. But people looked at us funny because, you can't wear biodegradable swimwear? Oh my gosh. Well, yes, you can, because it's a special lab-bred biodegradable swimwear that doesn't fall off in the ocean. It actually takes about 10 years to biodegrade. It's it's people have become really they didn't receive it well in the beginning, but now it's become a common fabric, and people have really jumped on the bandwagon, and things like for a good example of a well-known brand, Iconal, are actually on their way out because they're just a Band-Aid solution without sounding horrible, because once they recycle those plastic bottles into a fabric, they can't then recycle them again. It's considered a waste fabric. It then goes straight into landfill. So what are we actually doing? So with all of this kind of information, Amnisol was 110% the way to go. But like always, Styelle Swim is ahead of the market, which has been a little bit detrimental for us, but it's been good because because we kind of set the example for other brands, which is great. We really want to make sure that we do the right thing constantly.
So through this journey from 2016 to now in 2023, how have you viewed issues like, where you manufacture your swimsuits, going through all of those different layers of identifying where there's key risks and impacts in your manufacturing and your distribution chain?
Well, it's unpopular to believe. A lot of people think that China actually is nothing but unethical fashion, which it's not. We don't produce in China, but I'd like to just throw a bit of water on that fire. People think that China equals unethical. It doesn't. Some really great brands are actually made in China ethically, like Honey Birdette. Would you believe that's actually ethically sourced, as an example? So big shout out to Honey Birdette for doing it right.
Excellent. Good to hear.
Like Styelle, we make in Brazil. So I found a very small family-owned production house in Brazil, and they bring on contractors when we need to increase production or reduce production. So we only do it on a needs basis. We don't produce more. So most companies will produce up to 40% buffer on their stock. So if they think, okay, we're going to sell 10,000 of those, they'll actually make 14,000. And then they'll put those on sale for $15 down the track. It's just crazy. So Styelle caps it at a 10% buffer. And that's only in case we get new stockists and things like that. Because we want to make sure we've got stock ready for them, because selling season for swimwear is so short. But we cap that. We know what we're going to sell. We know what our projections. We do sustainable growth, proper sustainable growth. And I don't just mean environmental sustainability. I mean for longevity of brand. You've got to practice what you preach. And if you don't produce with conscience, then are you really sustainable? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you've got to really take that extra step. But it's a beautiful family-run business. It's two friends out of high school, actually, that own our production house. And the floor manager, named she's a grandmother, and she's on our website. You can see there's a whole blog about her, Marley. She's the most incredible woman. She runs the whole floor. The two friends actually don't have a whole lot to do with the business. They just do client relations. Marley runs everything there. And we like it like that. You know, Marley has things like paid leave if she hurts herself, even if it's outside of work, and things like that are never heard of in Brazil. You know, having paid leave and job security and things like maternity leave, stuff like that isn't heard of over there. So something that we were really adamant on having is making sure that the way that they are treated there is the same we are treated in the Western world.
It's interesting that it's that creating of a relationship between you and your direct manufacturer that's made that difference, and sort of having that confidence that what you're advertising is what's happening behind the scenes.
Oh, I feel sorry for the poor man that runs the place. He did not see me coming, I can tell you now. By questions, by random WhatsApp calls at different times of the day. I'm like, take me through the production house now. And I wouldn't give him 2 inches of leeway. It's like, you take me through right now. I want to see what's happening on the production floor. They send me updated videos. We actually recently changed over our sizing tags to be printed onto the bikini. So it's a product called silking. So that's actually biodegradable as well. So it's zero impact. And just as an example, there was actually a broken tile on the new production house of the place where they do the silking. And my production house actually paid for them to fix that tile on that floor. And that was the only thing that was wrong there. And, you know, because he sent me a video because he knows I won't go anywhere without having proper evidence of where we're going and what we're doing. And I said straight away, that tile needs to be fixed. I said, that is a trip hazard and I want that fixed before we go into that production house for the silking.
Fantastic.
Everything has to be thought about. And worker safety is paramount. So it's something that we really focus on.
And so do you look at these issues from the perspective of cost and risk, or potentially opportunity?
I see them more as an opportunity. I don't think there's such thing as risk when you're trying to treat people right and doing things sustainably and ethically. You know, there's no such thing as risk. The only risk there is to the end consumer when you've got to bump your prices up a little bit for doing things the right way. But it's now showing that sustainability and ethics are starting to drive purchasing decisions, more so in Europe and in America, but not so much in Australia, but we're getting there. You know, Australia's always been a year or two behind the rest of the world. So I do have faith. Aussies do have good hearts and we're a really great bunch of people. So I feel like we'll get there in the end.
I'm really glad you brought up price bump and where Australia is in terms of ethical fashion. We reported on this, but according to the latest Australian Ethical Consumer Report from Baptist World Aid Australia and Be Slavery Free, 3 in 4 Australians believe their purchasing habits can help stamp out modern slavery, but they're constrained by cost of living barriers. Are you finding this with your business, and how do you work around it?
Oh, absolutely. We're down 58% on last year.
Ooh.
But that's, you know what, we don't mind because it shows that people are putting their money in the right places, you know, and sometimes swimwear isn't that place and we're totally okay with that. We don't want to encourage people to buy unnecessarily. We want people to buy consciously and to make sure that they only need what's in their wardrobe, which is why we do the take back system. You know, we take all the rubbish out and we put the good stuff in. But it's really important that people really do think about what's on in their own lives and focus on that. And things like shopping are just not it. They're just not necessary. Like, let's be honest. And unfortunately, we've become a very wasteful society and we overconsume exponentially. But for Styelle, as always, we do things a little bit different to everyone else. And while everybody is putting their prices up, we've actually dropped ours.
Oh,
yeah, we dropped ours quite a lot. So what we did is because we couldn't hold our carbon positivity badge with the expansion onto marketplaces internationally. So what we did was we downscaled out of marketplaces And then we dropped our prices because we didn't need to cover the extra costs.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're actually degrowth. You're degrowing, which is such a controversial topic that I'm looking forward to getting into in future episodes of The Greener Way. So we'll have to have you back as to whether or not degrowth can actually result in better sales.
Well, I found already that it does. People really love our degrowth. Our following, everything is going up because people love that we're the degrowth strategy. And it's, it's something that's true to me. It's something that should be true to most. So that way we need to, set the example. Number one rule in the 9 points of leadership is lead by example.
Ooh, we love a little bit of 9 points of leadership here at The Greener Way. Thank you, Charys, for that. So what is the future of fashion from your perspective, Charys? And if fashion gets more ethical, how do you position your brand to be ahead of that curve?
Well, without sounding cocky, we already are.
Ooh.
We always have been, and we take a lot of pride in that. We like to be the brand that sets the standard. But, I do see fashion getting more ethical. People are boycotting the Sheins of the world. Now there's the launch of Temu, God help us. The amount of junk on there, people are going to get sick of replacing things 5-6 times. Like my beautiful stick blender that I've had for 20 years just recently cucked itself. I was heartbroken. And now I've had to go and buy another one. But, people are going to get to that point where they say, okay, I'm fed up with buying something new every 5 minutes. I want something that lasts. I want something that continues to look good. I want something that makes me feel like I've made a little change in this world, even if it is only a small one. Because that's what you do. When you buy, and at the risk of sounding like a broken record, when you buy something, you are literally casting your vote to the planet that you live on. There's that old saying, you don't inherit the planet from your parents, you borrow it from your children. So borrow the right planet that you want to create.
Oh, I love that as well, Charys. And so if it's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on here, aside from the fact that I'm a big fan, was also because I think it's an interesting discussion when we talk about a small boutique manufacturer and designer like yourself, who's able to go through the chain to verify ethical claims. It kind of highlights where other companies can go. So if you were going to give top 3 tips on how to become more ethical and sustainable, what would your top 3 tips be?
When I'm doing anything, I have an action-reaction requirement. So every action has a reaction, has a counter-reaction. So when you're looking at the action and reaction, so action being hunting out a supplier, reaction, them coming back to you, what is the counter-reaction henceforth from there? So what have they implemented that complements you as a brand to know where you want to be? So number 1 is look for that counter-reaction. Absolutely. Number 2 is even if you think you're doing it perfect, you can 100% find another way. And there's always something better out there. Like Styelle, like we've been awarded most sustainable swim brand in the country. However, is there things that we can do? 110%. And we are completely transparent about the things that we can do. There's 2 more things that I would like to remove out of Styelle. And number 1 is the liners. So we're actually researching the correct liners to move over to. There are some new wool pulp versions, so we're trialing those, and the way that we store things. So because of the gold hardware, we need to store in plastic. However, we don't send that plastic out to customers. We keep that in-house. We reuse it until it's literally died, and then we recycle it through a soft plastics program. So there's a whole bunch of things that you can do to always think about how to do it better. Would I like to get rid of plastic altogether? 110% I would. But that's what's right for my business right now. So that's what I'm doing, but I'm taking responsibility for what I do. So number 2, take responsibility and find a better way. Number 3, even if you've reviewed your brand and implemented everything, you've got to live it as a lifestyle. So the way you look at your brand is the way you have to look at your life. See, there's no point in going and doing all these things for your brand and preaching if you're not going to walk the walk personally. So you need to be transparent in your life and to show people that you are living what you preach.
Fantastic. Well, I think we'll end on that one. Charys Caldarella, founder and managing director of Styelle Swim. Thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Greener Way podcast. If you liked today's show, remember to rate and review us on your podcast platform and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an episode. Any feedback? Contact us on podcast@fssustainability.com.au. I'm Rachel Allen Backus.
The Greener Way podcast is a product of FS Sustainability, a show about people, the planet, and investing in our collective future. All information in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. The Greener Way podcast gives listeners access to information and educational content provided by discussing numerous financial sustainable options and our featured guests. It is not intended as a substitute for professional, legal, or tax advice. The hosts of The Greener Way are not financial professionals and are not aware of your personal financial circumstances. FS Sustainability operates under an Australian Financial Service License and the exemption made available under the Corporations Act 2001 in respect to any information or advice given. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement and, if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. For more information, head to the disclaimer page on the FS Sustainability website, fssustainability.com.au.